This section will cover GAR plan review and the score sheet. Just a recap of different GAR training available from DOEE. There is the overall GAR training that gives you the overview of GAR, plan submittal process, the guidebook, and then the role of a certified landscape expert. This training talks specifically about best plan submittal practices. So when you're submitting a plan for review, we're going to talk about the most common errors, provide resources, and examples of good and bad plans. On this slide are screenshots of prop request. Here you can see your lot type, zone, and lot area. If you click on the zoning link here, the D5, it will bring you to here, and on here you will see the JR requirement for that zone. As I said before, if you have multiple lots within one permit, each lot must meet its JR score. So in this example, the dotted line here shows the lot line division, and each lot, this one and this one, has their own score sheet. If you have multiple zones on a lot, you will also have to have separate score sheets. In this next section, I will review an example GAR plan and all of the different components included on that plan. To begin, this example plan has both GAR and stormwater management. It also has elements A1, landscape area less than 24 inches, A2, which is landscape areas greater than or equal to 24 inches, A3, fire retention, B1, B2, B3, which are different types of plantings, C1, which is a less than 8-inch of media of vegetated roof, and then F1, which is the bonus on native species. Here's the first sheet of example plan 1. There's a lot of information on here, but we will break down each section. You should include a north arrow and scale, include the property line, as public right-of-way cannot be used to meet JR, the certified landscape expert signature block, include a legend, this plan actually didn't have one, the green roof details, include the manufacturer on there as well, the green roof planting plan, I will go over that in detail in a little bit, include the GAR score sheet. So let's take a closer look at that score sheet. So I've zoomed into the top section of that score sheet. We see here the landscape elements A, B, and C. As a plan reviewer, they will use this score sheet to check to make sure it matches what is shown on the plans. So here's the plan view again, zoomed in. Again, the plan will look to see if the areas match the score sheet. So just looking at that landscape area piece of the score sheet, we see landscape areas with soils depth less than 24 inches is 604. We go through the plans and look for all of the areas where there is A1 credit claimed, and I've highlighted those in green, add that up, and it does in fact add up to 604. And that applies for A2 and A3, and they all match. Here I zoomed in again some more to see the details that they've included on the plans. Each element is clearly hatched and differentiated. I know that the diagonal lines are for A1 and the diamonds are for bioretention. For the A1 credit, it lists the area, category, and depth, and same for bioretention. The plan reviewer will go back and check that these areas are shown on the stormwater management plan correctly and that the information match. For bioretentions in green area ratio and stormwater management, there are some differences in how they are measured. For stormwater, the area of bioretention is at the top of ponding. For GAR, it is at the surface of the bioretention. In other words, only the area with bioretention media gets that A3 credit. If there are side slopes, then that can get A1 or A2 credit. So if you have vertical side slopes in your bioretention, say it has concrete walls, then GAR and stormwater management are the same area. So for the example plan, we had a bioretention with 80 square feet. In the stormwater management plan, we can see that it matches with 80 square feet and the profile shows that vertical side slope. Moving on, we zoom into the A2 area where we also see a B3 credit. The A2 area is labeled with category, area, and soil depth. The B3 credit is shown as tree number 1. They show the rootable soil area as 225 with a depth of 24 inches, which gives a rootable soil volume of 450 cubic feet. Now that rootable soil volume has to be within that 16-foot radius as shown on this plan. Some notes on trees. A tree with mature canopy less than 40 feet has a minimum soil volume of 400 cubic feet within a 16-foot radius. If the rootable soil volume is not met, it can qualify for B2 credit. Now for a larger tree that has a mature canopy greater than 40 feet, a B4 tree, the minimum soil volume is 1,000 cubic feet and within a 27-foot radius. For A2 credit, you can only claim it if it is beneath vegetated wall, within a rootable soil volume of a tree, or as preserved soils. There is a minimum of 2 feet soil depth and a maximum of 3 feet for calculations. In this section, we will cover green roofs in GAR. So here is the zoomed in view of that C1 green roof. So we zoom in a little bit and look at the details on the plans. We first see that the category, area, and depth are labeled. We check to make sure that that area is the same as the score sheet and that depth matches that C1 definition. The roof drain and slope should be shown on the plans. Also the roof access, how will someone get on this green roof to check, inspect, and maintain it. And then show the mechanical equipment to make sure that it has been accounted for and there's no green roof in the same space. And then also show the supplemental water supply for irrigation. So here is the roof slope sheet for that plan. Roof slope and drain is required, but this is just a very detailed roof drainage plan. Something a little bit simpler is fine. So next I'm going to go over some details about green roof planting plans. I'm going to use the pre-base example as the example to run through. So depending on what your media depth, it changes what you can plant in your green roof. So for our example, it was a 4.25 inch depth green roof. So we go to the correct corresponding row. And so what can be planted in this is succulents, grasses, and herbaceous plants. Non-succulents can cover a max of 60% cover. And then native plants have a maximum of 60%. And then there's no stacking allowed with B1 or B2. And at least 5 species should be evenly mixed in that planting plan. So if we look at the plant schedule for that green roof example we're looking at, we see that it is a mixture of a bunch of sedums, which we know are succulents and do meet the requirements for green roof plants for C1. A few more clarifications on this table. You cannot stack green roof C1 and C2 with any A1, A2, or A3 landscape area credit. You can't stack any vegetated roof with B1 because the B1 credit is already incorporated into the green roof credit. You can only stack B2 plants with a C2 vegetated roof, which means that it is greater than 8 inches in media. You should check the species and maximum native plant percentages for each green roof type. And then if your green roof is used for stormwater management as well, and your green roof is less than 8 inches, it cannot have permanent irrigation. Next, I will go over the planting plan for JR. So here we see page 2 of the example plan, and we'll go over the planting plan. While JR and public right-of-way planting plans can be shown together, it's much easier for plan reviewer to review them if they are shown on different sheets or at least on different tables. At minimum, the planting schedule needs to be separated out to define what is within JR and what is within public right-of-way. You should always have the planting details on the plans. So here is the plant schedule for the remainder of this JR plan. They show the quantity, common name, whether or not it's native, botanical name, the installed size, spacing, and any other details. What would have been very helpful is if they labeled the JR category as well on the plant schedule. So the plan reviewer, if you use a plant that's not common, they don't have to go back and double check what type of plant it is. So then the plan reviewer would go back onto the score sheet to check that the quantities match the score sheet. So what's shown on the planting schedule is matching what is shown on the score sheet. So we see here there was one tree proposed, which is a magnolia, and it does have less than a 40-foot canopy spread, so that's good. Then next we look at the B2 plants, and we add up all those plants, and it does in fact add up to 855, and then we can match up that ground cover of black-eye Susans as 182. So if you aren't sure which category a plant may be, there is a JR plant list that lists out some of the most popular plants proposed and what kind of plant they are. If you have a native species that is not on the JR plant list or nativeplantcenter.net, it is required to show two references in current publication to support that designation. Also, no proposed invasive plant species are allowed, and there is no credit for invasives. So next we went back to the example plan, and we're going to zoom in that bottom left corner to check their planting plan. So here we've zoomed in to the corner of this is the A2 area with a tree. The tree is that magnolia that we saw earlier, and it is a V3 tree, and it also is native. We also show the carax, 137 of them here, showing 12 inches off center, and as a category B2 and F1. Hatching is fine for perennials and ground cover. You don't have to show every single plant. And you should also check to make sure the plant spacing and plant area match. For example, 137 carax, does it, with 12 inches off center, does it actually fit in that space? And in fact, it does. So next here we have the third sheet on this plan set for JR, and it's the specifications. It has the planting, installation, and construction notes found on page 48 to 50 in the guidebook. It has the note that plant materials must meet the standards in the ANLA American Standards for Nursery Stock. Includes a soil and amendment specifications if needed, and then the landscape maintenance plan. The next sheet shown is the green roof specifications. It's fine if this is also shown in the stormwater sheets. Then it's okay if the bioretention specs are only shown on the stormwater management sheets. So next in this section, I'm going to go over other JR elements that were not discussed in the previous example. So permeable pavements. With permeable pavement, it has to meet the stormwater management guidebook design requirements. If there is green area ratio and stormwater management, the plan reviewer will check to make sure that both sets match. The plan reviewer will check the area and the depth of the permeable pavement to make sure it matches the score sheet. You should include the geotech report and infiltration test to show whether or not an underdrain is needed. And then also make sure you show, if an underdrain is needed, make sure you show how the underdrain is connected to the sewer. So here's an example with permeable pavement. They show a D2 permeable pavement of at least 24 inches of soil or gravel, which at 612 square feet. And we see on the plans here that it does match the stormwater plans. Next, we have renewable energy. You should provide the solar plans and the solar permit number. Should include the maintenance items for renewable energy, and provide a shading analysis if more than 20% of shading exists on the solar array location. You should show the actual layout of the solar panels rather than just a box labeled solar panels. And then schematic drawings showing wiring, inverters, and etc. should be included as well. Next element we have is vegetated walls. Supplemental irrigation is required and the source must be shown. Irrigation specifications should also include a recommended initial irrigation frequency and time based on the season and plant requirements. You should also provide vertical and cross-sectional details for the vegetative wall. So here's an example of the schematics of the vegetated walls. We see the plan view and then also the profile and cross-sectional view, and also the planting plan down here. Now for vegetated walls and screens, there are some offsets. There's a 5-foot offset if there is an adjacent facing lot line with 0 lot line development potential, or if there is an adjacent facing structure or wall. So both of these situations, a 5-foot offset is required. And this does not apply to lot lines abutting streets or alleys. So a reminder for minor JR projects, even if stormwater management is not required, you should still include a construction sequence, and that construction sequence should include the JR elements. And then even if stormwater isn't required, the stormwater management BMPs should still meet the stormwater management specifications in the guidebook. So next I'm just going to run through some very common comments for JR. Include the certified landscape expert and JR information in SGS. Enter all applicable DCRA building permit numbers associated with this project in the SGS. Include the note, the property owner is required to maintain the lot's minimum JR score through appropriate stewardship and maintenance of landscape elements after the property is granted its certificate of occupancy. You should include the construction sequence for each landscape element. It can be in the erosion sediment control and or the stormwater management sheets. Soil amendments should be included in erosion sediment control. If your JR plan is on multiple lots, upload proposed plats showing how they are to be combined. The GR information should match stormwater management and ESC plans. How are planting areas protected from vehicular traffic, whether wheel stops, curbs, bollards, fencing, etc.? Show on plans and provide details. The rootable soil volume is not met. Number of plants in the plant schedule do not match the plans. The area in the labels or the JR score sheet do not match the plans. Include schematic irrigation and drainage plan for rooftop and container landscaping or areas requiring harvested rainwater irrigation. So a few helpful things to include in plans are A narrative of the project, especially in terms of record lots, zoning changes, and such. Zoning Commission, Board of Zoning Adjustment, or Plan Unit Development case numbers. The roof slope and details, and plumbing and irrigation information.